So there are different forces in the world. You could say there's those who have power and those who give their labor, who do a job. And now again, more abstract. In music can be quite abstract. It can be only about pitches and rhythm. But anyway, you could work with forces. Look at this example. Here we have a foreground and a background. In the foreground, a hand is playing chromatic scales on a piano, but in the background, the piano itself is moving and hence creating different pitches, because sometimes the hand might play upwards, but in the background, the piano is going downwards and going more faster downwards than the hand is playing upwards. So in the end, the pitches are going downwards, but also the pitches are going slowly downwards, since there are these two forces kind of struggling against each other. And you could regard this as being a very abstract model, but that two forces are struggling against each other, I think, is a very common experience in all our lives. What the piano player, or this hand which is playing the piano, is actually doing is only playing chromatic scales upwards and downwards, from the highest to the lowest tone and backwards. But so much more movement is happening by this, so to speak, magical movement of the piano itself. And I think this is an experience everybody has, that you are just moving constantly, but the world around you is moving faster or moving in a different way, in a different order. And this is creating then this result, which is not only your movement, but also not only the movement of the world, but is then the sum of these two movements, so to speak. And this can, in some parts, be going really crazy, or it can be going painstakingly slowly. These are elements that I try to compose and make a small piece. I mean, it's part of a bigger piece for vibraphone and video, but this part is only the video, and it's again the idea of a fantasy of downfall. Obviously, here again, it is very important to have also the video information, so you could not listen to that music only with headphones. And I'm working a lot with additional information. I call this prepared listening. So your listening is influenced or shaped also by additional information given with text or with graphics, with video. And I would call this an extended definition of music, using this additional media as well. And I think that's, for me as a composer nowadays, interesting to think about what is music and how can I shape the listening, how can I extend the music, how can I reformulate the idea of music, what can be music. I think that's nowadays a task for me as a composer, but maybe it has been the task for composers since 1,000 years, always to reformulating what can be music, what isn't music yet. I'm not coming from a musical family, but I started to play the piano at the age of 8. And soon after I started to write my own music, since I thought, why should I always play only existing music? I could do my own stuff. So it was a very innocent, creative practice of doing that. And I continued this. Meanwhile, I started to play the violin as well. I played in the school's orchestra. But then also I like to do techno music and do with turntables. That was in the mid-1990s, at the climax of techno movement. So I'm also interested in electronic music, started to work with synthesizers and later with digital means of the computer. And then when I'm the age of 19, I studied composition at a music university, as well as studying music theory. So because of music theory, I could later also teach at a music university, and so I could make a living from that teaching, and besides that, continuing and developing my career as a composer. And then I think all of these elements come together of the use of classical instruments, coming from that tradition, and really from a tradition, learning harmony and counterpoint and all these things. And on the other hand, practices of electronic music, of using algorithms to produce melodies and rhythms, for example. And now since 10 years, there's the digital cameras and everything available, and YouTube and the entire web is also kind of stage and a platform to present my work. And then all this came together, and I think it was around the age of 25, where as a student I was trying out a lot of different styles, and I got to know more and more all music history. And I think it's around 25 that for the first time I used, for example, some samples from other composers' music, and I thought, okay, that's something special, that's at the moment something I really want to continue, I want to develop further. So I found my individual approach to music composition. And then it became more and more samples, for example, and did pieces with over 9,000 samples. And this is, I think, or it was at least, a new situation, because before a DJ normally he had 2 turntables and say 50 different vinyl records to combine, but not 9,000 samples. Yeah, and then more and more I thought about concepts of music, about political aspects of music as well. And then I became so to speak, an artist using sound, using music in a conceptual way. So thank you for your attention in this masterclass. If I may give you advice, keep doing sound, try things out, try things always out, and also keep attention to the world. I think I'm not sure if one can invent something, maybe it's more about discover things. And so doing music, creating new music means to be very aware of the things that go on, being aware of in which rhythms people walk, in which rhythms are people typing on their smartphones. Keep attention to that. Bye bye.